Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host today is Allison Despathy. Allison, how are you?
I am doing great. Good to see you. Good morning.
Good. So we've got a bunch of stuff as usual to talk about. Never enough time. But I think we should probably start with the 250th celebration.
Yes.
Independence Day, 4th of July is coming up on Saturday, the 4th. There's going to be a lot of parades. Randolph typically has a parade. I'm going to be in this East Corinth parade. They're all over the place.
North Danville, St. Johnsbury, Brandon, Warren. I think Bernie Sanders usually shows up in Warren. So if anyone has questions or wants to go give him grief, ask some good questions for him.
Yeah, really.
Right? What are they doing to help from honors?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I think kind of all throughout the state, Cabot does a great 4th of July. Peacham does a good tractor 4th of July over in the Kingdom. St. Johnsbury will, of course, be doing one as well. So a lot of people happen, and this is a big deal.
It is. It's
really
is.
Really big deal.
And it's one of those things that hopefully people will be reminded, and they'll think to actually not just read the Declaration of Independence of this country and a little bit of, and maybe even all of the Constitution. Maybe it'll spark more interest, but also read the Vermont Constitution.
Yes.
They're both very long-standing documents. And they've been long-standing documents because they were extremely well thought out and well written.
Exactly.
Not because they were knee-jerk reactions to something. Okay? And if we look at history and we don't learn from it, we will be doomed to repeat it.
Right.
And some of the things that we're seeing going on, a lot of these social programs, socialism, collectivism, these are all gaining momentum, in my personal opinion, because we are not getting, our children especially, are not getting taught enough about history.
Yes.
And the hundreds of millions of people who were slaughtered or starved to death because of collectivism, socialism, Marxism.
Right. And that's where I think you have to go back to and remember that collectivism is an abstract idea. It's not concrete like an individual.
Right.
And obviously our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our state constitution, which combines essentially our Declaration of Independence, it's all about the individual and protecting
respect for the individual,
and respecting the individual rights. And all we have to do is obviously look at, the First Amendment, and you've got, the right to say what you want to say, believe what you want to say, hang out with who you want to hang out with, go where you want to go, put information out there, our media. Our free press. I mean, and then you've got the Second Amendment to make sure that all stays protected.
The insurance policy for the First Amendment and the rest of it.
Exactly. And so I think, to me, what's really important always, but especially this 250-year celebration of our birthday, is keeping in mind that it is about the individual and the individual rights and ensuring those are protected and not letting mob mentality be aggressive and take away those rights and punish or hurt individuals. You have to go down to that sort of lowest sort of base level of the person, and that's concrete versus collective being an abstract idea. And that, to me, is, I think, such an important reminder. And I remember several years back, Senator Joe Benning, who's no longer, he's a side judge in St. Johnsbury now, but he had a bill that would basically make sure that every school was teaching civics. And that it never passed. And, at the Boys State.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
Yeah, at the Boys State,
there was really good.
A group of young men who came to the State House this past week and basically, went through what it means to be a legislature. And in our committee that I was working with and helping, we had a whole conversation about civics in schools. And there were many high school students there who were very upset that in some of the schools in Burlington, they were saying that they are removing American history and they weren't sure where civics was going to be covered at all. So they themselves, it was, interesting to see them having concerns around this.
I attended an event last year before a session, and it was another similar legislative experience for kids. And it was very disheartening and very disappointing for me to hear that the students who were there were saying, we shouldn't. Some were saying we should learn less American history and more world history, which was very disappointing to me.
We need to strike a balance. I mean, they're both so important. But if you don't have that base, my goodness.
We need to have the base. And number two, if you have classes, and I hope we still do, for students who excel and want to get deeper into history, to be able to choose world history or American history.
Right.
Because there is a lot in American history that can teach us a lot about how we differ from the world, and how our country has been a leader in so many ways in the world, and how we have been a beacon for people who are not free to come to be free.
Keeping freedom and independence alive and not allowing tyranny to take hold. Exactly. And that's such an important reminder at this time.
It was great. And, I was at the Boys State event as well. It was great. There was great participation. I'm very thankful for employees of the State House who came. Some of the other legislators, I'm not going to drop names because I know I'm going to forget somebody and offend somebody, so I won't do that. But it was on the last Thursday. It was really good. I was asked to get involved with it. I'm glad I did. I am an alum from Boys State from 1980.
I didn't know that, Mike. That's awesome.
It was pretty crazy.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so many years later to be involved with this at the State House.
On this level now.
Yeah, it was interesting because, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about a lot of the legislation that happened on this show, and it was interesting. I sat in on a committee where they talked about the SALT bill.
Oh,
One of them was the SALT bill.
And that was vetoed by the governor this year. Yep.
They had, the young men had a wildlife corridor bill.
Oh, wow. Here we go again. No.
Here we go again. So there was some good back and forth, and there was some actually good input, because one of the points that one of the young men made was they were talking about these passages, not really culverts or bridges, but these ways for wildlife to pass from one side of a major road to another, which make a lot of sense, but it was pointed out by me and others about the expense.
Yes.
So, you can have a lot of great ideas, but you have to keep in mind the expenses.
Right.
And one of the other ones was that really got me jazzed up, because, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me talk about this subject on this and many other shows, and Allison, I think you're in favor of it. They had a nuclear energy bill.
Oh, right.
So
big debated topic, right?
It was great. There was good debate in committees, and there was when we were out on the floor doing our floor exercise, there was a lot of good debate about. Obviously, we didn't get to all the bills, and one of the reasons we didn't, and they got a taste of it, was sometimes floor debate can be very vigorous.
Oh, yes.
And guess what? Which bill took up a lot of time?
SALT.
No.
Civics.
The civics one.
Of course.
A lot of time.
Right. Well, I'm glad there was good conversation for them to all think about it.
That's really interesting. It was really great to see. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a student in your family, a grandchild or a child, ask them what they're doing in school with regard to civics.
Right.
And if they're not, maybe find ways to encourage them outside of school, and then see if you can't, get one of the history teachers to jump onto this teaching physics. I talked to one of the teachers at the event, and he was really enthusiastic about keeping civics in the forefront with respect to his students.
Oh, we need it. We absolutely
it was really
need it.
good.
And I think back to, I have taught many classes for homeschoolers on civics, and I can't even tell you how much the kids love debating. They love arguing back and forth and understanding that was always their favorite time of like, can we do another debate? Can we do another debate?
Right,
and you think about that's what you guys are doing in the legislature all the time, is debating these tough topics.
Right. And it was tough for us because we were trying to give them a more realistic feel.
Yes.
And one of the things that the organizers, the people who came in and were involved with the whole, I think it was a week-long project, or at least a few days.
Yes.
And they said, give them a little bit of the procedure, but don't get them bogged down in that.
Right.
And we, me, after being 2 years in there, I was trying to, no, you got to do it this way, do it this way. But you're right. encouraging them to have the conversation, to have the
Absolutely.
debate. It's about that. They can learn a lot of the procedure later on,
Right.
but being able to encourage them to talk. And everybody, you, Allison, everybody in the audience probably already knows this. When we stop talking, we don't fix problems.
Exactly.
We make them worse.
Exactly.
So you're absolutely right. Encouraging kids to debate and have it, even on hard topics.
Right.
Like,
and even when you're on different sides of the story, like we were all
Yes.
coming in from different places.
Yes.
And one of the other things that I wanted to add into the mix there is there was some debate between me and some of the other adults in there, because
Yep.
some of them said, some of the other legislators and lobbyists in
yep.
my group said, as a legislature, we just have to do these overarching themes. We don't have to worry about details. And I said, whoa, wait a minute,
that's
though.
part of
you
what we-
gotta look at the details, because you gotta understand the impact. So one of the things that our group
Yeah.
of the young men were contemplating is universal health care. And I said, wait a minute. Shumlin tried that. It was going to be way too expensive. That wasn't going to work. So if anything, let's have a study group, about it or something.
Well,
So
it's interesting in your committee that study groups came up, because study groups came up on two subjects with two bills.
Yep.
I can't remember the bills, but also, I was very enthusiastic about the nuclear energy one, and I was giving these young men as much information as I knew about the newest technology. But one of them brought out the idea in research, realized that the things that people have been putting out, some have been putting out about the safety, is really not accurate. Okay, let's call it that. And this young man understood that. And I made a point to say, look, I've given you a lot of the pros, but still look at the other side.
Yes.
Go and do your research. Look at both sides so you can actually make a really informed decision, because you want to avoid unintended consequences.
And this brings me to there is a very strong anti-nuclear base in Vermont,
Yeah.
rightly so, because of the waste. You understand, we need
Right.
all voices in the conversation. And many are, of course, concerned because there's 68 casts of nuclear waste in Vernon.
Yep.
And we're trying to see what's going to happen in this Vernon site that's been leased. Will it be a
Right.
small modular nuke? Will it be a data center? Will it be, battery storage for renewable energy? So people are not knowing what's going to go on there. But I will say that if there is tech, and I don't know this, Mike, if there is tech that could use that nuclear
There
waste,
is.
okay,
There is.
and that's where
I've read about it, where that is actually because of our technology. Okay, because of the advancements in nuclear. I don't know if we're there yet, or we're very close, where that nuclear waste is really not nuclear waste anymore.
So
And
that's the
reason
piece
it's
I wanna dig
fuel.
into. Yes.
It potentially is fuel for newer technology. So what that could do is, it's already there. It's already been delivered. There's no shipping cost.
right.
Now you take it, and these SMRs, from what I'm told, 5 years without refueling. And I asked these young men in committee, I said, how would you like, you're all new drivers, how would you like to go 5 years without fuel in their tank? And, all the smiles
Right,
and the
right.
shaking of their heads.
My parents would be happy.
Yeah, right. So 5 years between refueling, and that stuff, the so-called nuclear waste in the casks, right now it looks like it's probably not, because of emerging technology. Once
Right.
that's depleted, it can then, from what I've heard, and I don't know all the details, one of the uses could be, I think it's nuclear isotopes, I think in medical industry.
The radioactive. We've talked
Right.
about that, but I don't know if
Yes.
the tech is there. So
Now,
I
I've
want to
read
kind of
about
dig
it
into that more.
on two different sites, but I can't remember the sites. But I know there is a lot of promising technology right now.
Okay.
So,
And that also then brings me to just looking at, unless we need to hold off for the
no,
other
keep
time.
going.
Okay.
We got about 30 more seconds.
Okay.
And we got to
So basically, just looking at the turbines, the gas turbines being used for AI data centers right now
Yes.
by GE, and it is insane how much power they can produce, and millions of homes that can run on this power. But we're using it for AI, so you can just see this power demand ramping up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
So-
keep going after the break here, huh?
We've got to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host is Allison Despathy. We should probably just jump right into our next subject because we're going to run out of time every segment because you and I just love to talk. So, this next one, this school has been involved in a couple of suits. The last one, they scored big. This one is about education, ladies and gentlemen. This article is from Vermont Daily Chronicle, dated, June 26, 2026. Christian school sues state over Act 73 tuition exclusion. And I'll just read a little bit at the beginning.
Mid-Vermont Christian Academy in Quechee, Vermont.
Yes.
Who is now bringing this lawsuit. And with the help of Alliance Defending Freedom. Right.
Yeah, let's see. Mid-Vermont Christian School in Quechee, like you said, has asked a federal appeals court to overturn Vermont's Act 73 exclusion of religious schools from the state's tuition and other public education benefit programs, arguing the policy violates the First Amendment, according to a statement by Alliance Defending Freedom. So this, like I said, this has been a long brewing issue.
Yes. Major controversy for a long time.
Yeah, it has. And the thing that bothers me, and I don't know how much more you know about this, and if you want to comment on it, you can. Why are we not asking which of these schools that we have operating in Vermont is giving us the highest proficiency scores, the most successful students, the students who can get accepted to college, go to college and not be informed that, oh, guess what? You're not proficient enough to be at college level yet, so we have to have you in remedial classes to get you at college level first.
Right.
So that adds at least a half a year to your college and more money.
Right.
How many of the kids, I saw somewhere there was an article posted, the percentage of high school seniors that are not proficient in math.
Oh, it's so sad. And I see it. I think I've talked about Vermont State Colleges where I teach with some of the writing in particular. And like, how did they graduate high school? How did they not get the support along the way? It's devastating.
Yeah. You know, I worked for a pool company before I went out on my own on the Eastern Shore. And I had a guy who I worked with, he was a contractor as well, and he had guys he hired that did not know how to read a tape measure.
Right, wow.
They didn't know how to read a tape measure.
Right, yes.
How do you, some of these people don't know how to spell correctly. How do they fill out a job application?
I know, and that's just unacceptable. I mean, we're talking about education, and this goes back to just even what you're saying, Mike, with raising this fundamental question of it really should be about the parents and the family choosing what's right for the student. And if the schools are providing a good education, if they're the right fit for their child, then they should be able to go there and receive funding. But as we know, there's been this ongoing battle about whether public dollars should be used for religious schools. And I would say back a few years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case against Maine that they cannot be prohibiting religious schools from receiving their version of town tuitioning or public dollars like we have here in Vermont. And so that was the Carson v. Macon ruling.
Okay.
And so that was what then came in, even though Vermont had been denying religious schools from receiving town tuitioning. And then that changed with this Carson v. Macon U.S. Supreme Court ruling. So then the religious schools for a few years were allowed to receive public dollars until Act 73.
Oh,
and so
okay.
this
So
is
Act
what
73,
this lawsuit,
okay.
Act 73 shut that down. And the way that they did it is they said, oh, well, you know, what we're going to do here in Act 73 is we're going to put a moratorium on any other approved independent school coming in, meaning there can be no more independent schools that come in and can receive town tuitioning. And then what they further did is they said, if there is a school that has not been receiving at least 25% of their students with town tuitioning, then they're no longer eligible to receive Vermont's town tuitioning program. And that shut out every religious school. And this is where this lawsuit now comes from.
Okay.
Talk about discrimination, in my opinion.
Ask you a question and wait to answer. I want to give you this quote and then answer the question.
Yes.
The question is, are independent schools, aren't they currently, and I already know the answer, held to a higher standard than public schools? And I want to read this quote. Quote, religious schools and the families they serve aren't second-class citizens. Yet Vermont continues to treat them as such by excluding them from a public benefit available to most non-religious private schools, end quote, Cortman said. Quote, all parents should be able to send their kids to schools that are the best fit for them. Exactly. Didn't you just say that?
Yes.
And the First Amendment protects parents' right to choose religious schools, end quote.
And this is their argument, exactly.
Yeah. And didn't we, I believe we heard on the House floor testimony from a legislator from Southern Vermont about how independent schools are held to a higher standard.
They have an audit. They have an audit. And if they don't pass the audit, then they're at risk, whereas public schools do not have that audit.
They do not have the same standard.
Exactly.
So we have independent schools that are, and you and I covered this on another show, where statistically independent schools produce students that are higher performing anyway.
Yes.
To the tune of 70% in a lot of cases.
That I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I remember. I think was it Rob Roper article that
Maybe
was
he
in?
went there.
Okay. So why would we take some of the highest performing schools
and eliminate them from the town tuitioning program?
Do we and then say we're worried about the students?
You know why? In my opinion, because there's a battle over students.
There's a battle over students.
We have dwindling numbers of students in Vermont.
So you're saying that basically
they're
public
fighting over
education
students.
System has a monopoly over their customers.
Absolutely have a monopoly. But then they want the students there because what happens? If they have students, they get more money. So if they start to lose students to some of these other schools that might be smaller, work better for certain students, maybe doing a better job, then this is where the battleground really is over this. And this is where it's great to see the Mid-Vermont Christian Academy again coming forward with a lawsuit and saying this is against our First Amendment rights.
Yeah, and you know what it brought you talking about other things? Cost. What are the independent schools on average? I know some are more expensive, but there are considerably large number of independents that are less expensive.
Absolutely.
When you talk, and a lot of these, you got to remember the population in this Mid-Vermont Christian school, these are people who are already paying school tax and then sending their children to another school.
Yes, unless they have the town tuitioning, right?
Okay,
yeah.
If they have town tuition.
But there's many towns in Vermont that don't have town tuitioning, and that then leads us back to your bill, H-89, in which you've tried to make this available to all Vermont families and students, so that they can have this choice to get their child in the right place, which is really
for the peace of mind of the student, for the parents, and for the idea that we can save money because of competition and improve the quality.
Right.
I just think we say with energy, all of the above policy. Why not all of the above with respect to education as well?
And people should also understand that if you are an approved independent school in Vermont, you have to jump through hoops to be approved, which means then you could receive town tuitioning. But that's where one of my sort of legislative goals from a lobby standpoint is we need to get rid of that moratorium. Because I think, as we all know, is when there is a problem going on, like low academic proficiency, rising costs of education, struggles with curriculum in schools, that's where the people are going to come into that space and start offering solutions. And with that moratorium in place right now, they're not able to enter the education world and offer the solution to try to solve this problem.
I've got a question for you. I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it so that the listening audience can know. What if we were to take like these independent schools that are already operating and say, look, here, let's have ourselves a little competition. You pick any of our students or have an outside arbitrator. Pick any of our students, a dozen of them, and we will have the arbitrator pick any dozen of public school students. And if the independent school students perform at or better than the public schools, why not give it to them? Why not give it to them?
Well, that would be one way to sort of test. But then I'd also say that, learning and testing, kids are going to do different in different ways. So to me, it's back to the family and the child and their experience. And if they're getting, the skills that they should be getting. My plan personally is remove the moratorium, let other independent schools come in and be approved to receive town tuitioning, put a foundation formula cap. This is what it costs to educate a child. Open up the market, and let families and children decide where they're going to go and see where we land and what is successful.
What do you
that's
think?
like that's the way it should be happening.
Yeah.
And that's where the religious
gentlemen? Sound like too much common sense? Is there too much common sense flowing here?
But people have a real issue with public dollars following children to schools that are not public schools. But I think it's important for us to remember that public education is very different than public schools.
Okay.
Public education is just the education of the public. That can happen in many, many ways.
Right.
It doesn't just have to be a public school. And in many cases, education isn't happening at some public schools in Vermont. We know that with the low proficiency.
Right.
But I think if we can just open that up, get rid of that moratorium, and allow other schools to come in, it's going to be really interesting to see where Mid-Vermont Christian Academy lands in this lawsuit. And I think they really have a case to be made because for several years, they were able to receive that town tuitioning, and then they were just cut off. And that's where one of the quotes in this article that you're referencing from Vermont Daily Chronicle, it says, for decades, the Vermont Agency and Board of Education banned all religious schools from the town tuition program and other public benefit programs. Religious schools and families spent years seeking constitutional vindication in federal court, which they got, only to be banished again by the hostile Vermont legislature. So no offense, Mike, but it is the legislature creating this policy, like Act 73, right? And that's where the shift needs to happen so that we can have these options for families and students.
Okay. Well, I think it's just one of those things. If we're going to have a debate needs to include this.
Yes.
If we're worried about our students and we're worried about their scores, worried about them being prepared for the world after they leave school, whether they go into a trade, whether they go into college, somehow preparing them for life on their own eventually. Life on their own, be able to do whatever it is that they choose to do that makes them happy in their life. But it whether you want to be a framer or a plumber or you want to go to college to learn to be an engineer, have our schools prepare them. Let's be in the top percentile, 5 to 10%, instead of the bottom where we are right now.
We are.
That should be the most troublesome. And why are we not looking at all the options? It seems like we're carving out options that could potentially be some of the best.
And I think that's where also one of the things I think about just as a homeschooler, and whose kids went to private, independent, and public schools for high school. But just in thinking about, we need to make sure that we're getting education and not indoctrination.
Agreed.
That's what's happening. And we need to make sure that students have a bunch of different opportunities. And that's the only way we're going to do that is if there's different options in the type of education that they can receive versus here's your one-stop shop. You got a public school. Boom. We've got curriculum across the board. It's all the same at all the schools. Like that's just not going to work. We all know that there's not a one-size-fits-all. For energy policy, for education policy, for healthcare, and that's where we have to just bring it back to making sure that those choices are really available. Yeah.
Well, I think we agree there. I wonder how many people in the listening audience do. I know that this education thing is still probably years away from being solved. I'm hoping that some of the things that came out of the legislation this past session help. I know there's still a lot of questions. I know there are a lot of schools, districts, and SUs that are
flipping out now. They are flipping out with this whole merger conversation.
Yeah, the merger conversation.
But many are hopeful about the CSIS. Many are hopeful that these sort of shared education services might bring some benefit and savings and support schools. So we'll see where that all lands.
I'm hoping that those shared services grow to a large enough number of services where we get a big enough savings, because so far I believe there's only one operating and it's so new that there's small savings, but they're very, very small.
Right.
And we're talking about $2.5 billion
education budget. Wow.
So we need big savings. We need savings in the hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to reduce the tax burden on residents in in the state of Vermont.
Exactly. So. And the one other last thing that I would just add real quick is, just keeping in mind that reading and writing are basically, research shows, like 70, 80% of education. If you can do those things, then you can learn. Then you can continue to move it forward regardless. So that is a baseline you've got to pay attention to.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time here. We'll see you in the next segment. You're listening to Right Side Up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host is Allison Despathy. Okay, so before we get into our next subject here, the usual third segment, rightsideUpradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to drop us a line, and I apologize if you sent me an email this past week. I haven't checked the email yet, but I will, I promise. If you miss the show on the radio, don't fret. You can find us on WNTK.com. Click on the podcast button, scroll down to Right Side Up, and you can find any number of our shows. You can listen any time of the day or night. You can also find us on Podbean. You can find us on 802 Scoop Facebook, 802 Scoop YouTube, and also at our friends at GraniteGrock.com. So, the next subject here. This is another article. This one is also out of Vermont Daily Chronicle. Vermont Chamber. Vermont is in trouble. This is June 23, 2026. And I think it's pretty good. The only thing, after reading and seeing some other articles and hearing other people make some arguments, I also disagree with some of the housing numbers.
Yeah, some of the numbers and the data around that are questionable for sure. Yeah,
only because of when they came out, and they've not been corrected, even though we know we've got net out migration and we're losing population for other reasons, right?
And
Kids
people are not coming in like they were during COVID. So this is where there's this number discrepancy.
We don't have new kids born, new citizens born in the state.
Right.
We have people, retirees leaving, migrating out.
Yes.
We have look at the deaths versus births. So but the rest of this article makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and this was the Chamber article, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is by the Vermont Chamber. We're aging, shrinking, and pricing out our own children, workers, and entrepreneurs. And this is a conversation that people have all over the state. I hear this all the time.
Yes.
Schools face consolidation, taxes are climbing, and employers struggle to fill jobs. We're too dependent on federal funding to support state spending. And that's very interesting, Allison, because you and I were talking. There is a candidate for governor right now who's saying forgo federal funding.
Yeah.
We will collapse the economy if that happens tomorrow.
I would love to be self-sufficient and not have that, but right now we are so heavily dependent at a what are we, like
$9.48 billion.
$9.5 billion state budget.
And 3 to 3.5 billion is federal funding.
Yeah, so a third.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, how many roads in your town, if they're gravel, need to be graded more often? I'll bet most of you raised your hand. How many, if you have more paved roads, need to be repaved because there's so many potholes you have to get a realignment on your vehicle?
Right.
Okay. Our transportation budget will take such a huge hit that we will really be in trouble. We won't have to worry about a lot of things because nobody will be coming here. The roads will be that bad. Okay.
You will be homebound.
Yeah. Okay. So it will be much greener because nobody will be able to do jack you know what.
Right. So that is just unrealistic to even talk about, even though self-sufficiency is a great goal for the state, but we are not there.
And we were a state that was really... People prided themselves on being self-sufficient.
Right.
And lately with this social this and social program for that. Getting people on social programs and dependent on government has taken us to a point where we couldn't do this tomorrow if we wanted.
No way. And I think that, what is it? I think literally in the past 20 years, our state budget has doubled. I think that's what's gone on.
Yeah.
We have come up. It's
Even
it's out of control.
Before COVID, it was sensible. It was reasonable.
Yeah.
Now compared to what it was prior to COVID, and compared to our other New England states, our size and our budget, New Hampshire is a perfect example of why we should be saying, wait, what?
Yes.
The number of residents in New Hampshire versus their budget is completely different from Vermont. And that we should be looking at and saying something has got to change.
What are they doing here that we aren't?
Something's got to give.
Right.
Right. So a housing shortage is driving up prices, slowing economic growth, and leaves young people feeling forced out. It's the truth.
It is
now,
true.
the housing crisis, the housing shortage is not as dire, I think. I think it's probably half the number of what... I was even saying it on the show, but after being in the State House and reading a bunch of publications about it and where the numbers came from and how they just kept being repeated instead of people saying, well, wait a minute, over so many years, is that an accurate number? Has it dropped? Has it risen? We haven't seen that, so I doubt those housing numbers.
And that's where it just really seems, and it has been said,
yes,
by some putting that data out there that, these are aspirational numbers for what maybe Vermont wants to look like or could look like. Obviously, that's debatable too, but they're not grounded in any reality. They're absolutely not.
No, yeah. And a lot of people are saying that.
Right.
So let me just read a little bit of here. For decades, Vermont has treated growth as a threat to mitigation. We're living through the consequences of that mindset, and it hits marginalized communities hardest. True equity requires expanding supply rather than fighting over the crumbs of a shrinking economy.
Right.
With growth, we do need growth. I understand there are a lot of people who fear that the state is not going to stay the way it is. We also need not to take a snapshot of what the state is now and freeze it in time.
Right.
And so many of the regulations, including the changes like you and I are hearing about now with the regional planning commissions.
Yes.
Some of them are reasonable. Some of them have taken a really bad turn.
Some of them are trying to mandate to towns and become a governance structure.
Right.
And that's something to talk about next time, but that is a problem for sure.
Right.
And also we have to keep in mind that as part of Act 181, there were housing targets that were given to the regional planning commissions to divide up amongst their towns, so to speak. And there's been a lot of backlash, especially in the kingdom, looking at a town like Sutton or Newark, these very rural towns, saying, why are you telling me we got to put 60 homes in this house? Where is that going to go? Is that a reality? So there's just a lot of frustration around even this sort of top push of housing targets.
That's based on what I believe are the inflated numbers, that they need to be adjusted down only because we haven't had the growth.
Yes.
Economic or otherwise.
And I think that's where, to me, instead of this top down, this is what we need, boom, we're going to force it on people. If we come from the bottom up, as we know, and remove some of the barriers and make sure that we don't have this, burdensome regulation that isn't necessary to allow housing to come in, on a natural, organic level versus forcing it. I mean, that's the path.
It absolutely is. And look, looking at the statutes, the green books.
Yes.
We have too many regulations. We have oppressive regulations. Some need to be relaxed. Some need to be repealed. And if we don't start doing that very next session, the consequences that this article is talking about, we are going to realize very quickly.
Right. We're going to hit a wall.
We are definitely going to hit a wall.
Right.
So, the closure of the facility up in, is in St. Albans?
St. Albans, the dairy facility.
The dairy facility.
Yes.
That's
a signal.
Yeah.
It is
it's the canary in the coal mine.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We have a dairy industry now in Vermont that can't send their milk to a processing plant within the state.
Right.
And the state is a huge producer of milk. This could cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to our dairy producers. And this is just one example.
And this is where, to me, it's like, and I think we talked about this last time, but I'll just reiterate, Mike, that what can we do at this time? And that's where we can make it easier for farmers to make cheese and to use their product to do value-added products.
Yes.
We can expand it so that they can sell their products in stores, in schools, that they can sell their raw milk products. So we can give the farmers and make sure they have the tools to be able to use their products, locally.
Right.
Like that. So,
right.
That's the way we have to be thinking when we start to see these trends happening.
Yeah. And these are the kind of regulations and repeals that need to be fast-tracked.
Yes.
Where we take and look and say, no, we know because of statistics, we know because of changes in technology that we've been able to make food safety, food safer to store, to transport, to eat. Because of all those food safety advancements, we need to, like you said, be able to have farmers markets and direct from farm to
consumer,
farm to restaurant, whatever.
Right.
So that the economy is a more local economy.
Yes.
I love, like you said, I love the idea of us being able to be a completely self-sufficient state.
Right.
Maybe one day, but with the regulations we have and the situation we have today, it's completely impossible.
Right. Those are the roadblocks.
It really, truly is.
And this will probably force these conversations. I mean, it's sad that happened. It's horrible because I think 80 plus people lost jobs, plus more of the burden on the farmers to pay for the transport of their milk. But hopefully this stuff will force the legislature to prioritize what can we do to help the farmers.
I hope there are already people making phone calls and trying to figure a way to stop this.
Yes.
I really hope we can have some sort of a way to, reassure those employees that, wait a minute, we're going to rethink this. We know how vital this is because it is.
It is.
We want. I've talked to so many farmers in the State House and out of the State House. I don't care the size of your farm.
Right.
I want you to be viable.
Exactly.
If you want to remain small, but you can remain viable that way, terrific.
Right.
If you want to grow and you want to figure ways to remain viable while growing, great.
Yes,
exactly. And I want to see some of these farms, some of these fallow fields either return to hay fields, or I want to see livestock in them again.
Right.
I want to see livestock in them again.
Or so maybe like Vermont potato chip, grow some potatoes. I think there was, I have to say, and I have to double check this and I'll follow up next time, but in Danville from, more than 100 years ago, I think there was a law that if a farm field went unused for a certain amount of time or years, that the farmer had to forfeit. And I'm not saying that this is a good idea at all, but it was like the significance of if you're not using the farm for food production, if you're not raising cattle or raising potatoes or raising crops, because that's when we were a little bit more self-sufficient in our communities,
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. Here's the thing. We've gone from only 20% forested to just shy of 80%, like 76 or 78% forested.
Yes. Okay. Big shift.
I was talking to a neighbor who said, got a beautiful acreage. You can see it from another family member's place. And he said he would love to see it 50-50, go back.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about 50-50. We could probably argue. We could probably spend a whole show on this.
I know.
Get in a logger or two and somebody who does somebody else from working lands to make their argument. But I would love in my district, in my town even, to see even close to half a dozen farms spring up on one road where I was told not more than a year or two ago that there were in the teens of dairies.
Oh, wow. Okay,
on one road.
Right.
On one road.
And the other thing I would just add to that conversation is we have a farmer in Burke area in the Northeast Kingdom. Phenomenal. Good friend of mine. Awesome. Amazing milk and beef. And the thing I would say that he has done, he is no longer graining his cows. So not only are the cows healthier, but he's not dependent on any of the grains or the costs.
Great.
They're just on grass. He gets phenomenal payment for his quote unquote grass milk. So he is doing really, talk about viable. He's doing really, really well. And I think that's another model that we do have space. We can pasture cows for the health of the animal, the health of the people drinking the milk, and the health of the farms.
Yeah, well, the thing is we need more pastures because we have to be able to remember, ladies and gentlemen, and I know some of you probably just recovered your wells from the drought.
Oh, I know, right.
Okay, so if we're going to have that, we need to have the pasture to be able to deal with storing enough hay for the event of emergency.
Yes.
Or we're going to need to have the resources outside the state to import it.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So as long as we have the preparedness to deal with that kind of stuff,
feeding the
I'll be
animals
fine.
through the winter. Exactly.
It would be great to be able to sustain like that, but we need to open up some more of this pasture land.
Yes.
Maybe return some of the forested land that some of these farmers own back to forest, and not grow industrial solar.
Right. No, absolutely not. Keep it off the farm fields and forests. It's hideous.
That's not the fix.
No, it's so subsidized. It is absolutely not going to work for Vermont to be doing that. We're in Vermont.
Yes,
we're northern latitude. Come on.
So, well,
that's a whole other conversation,
yes.
Mike.
That'll do it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, stay safe, stay informed, listen to Right Side Up.